There is a quiet kind of collapse that almost nobody notices while it is happening. It does not look like disaster. It does not look like screaming. It does not always look like failure, weakness, or defeat. Sometimes it looks completely normal. You wake up, check your phone, and let the world enter your mind before you have even entered your own day. You read one message, one comment, one silence, one notification, and suddenly your inner state no longer belongs to you. You were fine a minute ago. Then someone did not answer. Someone criticized you. Something went wrong. A memory returned. A fear appeared. A task you have avoided for weeks came back into your mind. And in one small instant, your whole internal weather changed. That is where most people lose themselves. Not in the big tragedy. Not in the dramatic collapse. Not in the obvious storm. They lose themselves in the tiny surrender. The small moment where something outside knocks on the door and they hand it the keys. And that may be the uncomfortable truth behind real strength. Most people do not need a life with fewer storms. They need a mind that stops becoming the storm every time the sky changes. Because if your peace only exists when everything outside behaves, then what you have is not peace. It is permission. Permission from the weather, permission from people, permission from results, permission from money, permission from attention, permission from approval, permission from silence not hurting too much, permission from the past not returning today. And a life built on permission is a fragile life. It waits for the world to cooperate before it can breathe. It waits for someone to understand before it can feel valid. It waits for certainty before it can act. It waits for comfort before it can keep a promise. It waits for praise before it can believe in the work. It waits for calm before it can become calm. But calm that depends on calm surroundings is not mastery. It is luck, and luck is not a foundation. Sooner or later, something will move. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will leave. Something you planned will fail. Your body will feel fear. Your mind will invent a disaster. Your ego will feel insulted. Your routine will break. Your effort will go unnoticed. And then the real question appears, not, how peaceful are you when life is gentle? The real question is, who are you when life stops asking for your consent? Because life does not always ask. It interrupts. It changes. It removes. It exposes. It delays. It disappoints. It gives you a door you did not want and closes one you thought would stay open. And in those moments, a person discovers whether their inner life has a center or only a mood. A mood rises and falls with conditions. A center remains available even when conditions shift. Not untouched, not emotionless, not superior, available. There is a massive difference between being unaffected and being unruled. The goal is not to become untouched. That is not wisdom. That is either fantasy or numbness. The goal is to become less easily ruled. Ruled by fear, ruled by anger, ruled by shame, ruled by approval, ruled by urgency, ruled by the need to be seen, ruled by the need to be right, ruled by the terror of losing something that was never fully under your control. This is where practical philosophy begins. Not in a quote, not in an aesthetic, not in a video about ancient wisdom. It begins in the exact second where you feel pulled and you do not immediately obey. Epictetus built one of the most useful distinctions in human life around this idea. Some things are up to you, some things are not. It sounds simple enough to ignore, but it is not simple when you apply it. Because most people say they understand this distinction while still living as if the outside world owes them emotional stability. They know they cannot control another person's opinion, but they still collapse when that opinion is negative. They know they cannot control the past, but they still let it rewrite the present. They know they cannot control every outcome, but they still treat uncertainty like an insult. They know they cannot force recognition, but they still measure their worth by whether recognition arrives. So the issue is not information. The issue is obedience. You may know what is not under your control, but do you stop obeying it? That is the real test. Because there are things you cannot command, but you still serve. You cannot command other people's approval, but maybe you serve it. You cannot command the future, but maybe you serve your fear of it. You cannot command loss, but maybe you serve the anxiety of it. You cannot command every result, but maybe you serve the shame of not producing one. You cannot command what people think, but maybe you serve the image you hope they will keep of you. And a thing does not need to be under your control to control you. It only needs your obedience. That is where freedom begins to become serious. Freedom is not getting the world to stop moving. Freedom is withdrawing obedience from what never deserved to govern you. That is not cold. That is not selfish. That is not weakness. It is the beginning of internal authority. And internal authority is rare because most people are trained to live outward. They scan the room before they scan themselves. They ask, how was that received? Before asking, was that aligned? They ask, did they like me? Before asking, did I respect myself? They ask, what will happen? Before asking, what is the next right action? They ask, how do I avoid pain? Before asking, what kind of person do I become if I keep avoiding it? And slowly, almost invisibly, life becomes outsourced. Their value is outsourced to applause. Their confidence is outsourced to performance. Their peace is outsourced to circumstances. Their discipline is outsourced to motivation. Their identity is outsourced to memory. Their decisions are outsourced to emotion. They still appear to be choosing, but inside they are being pulled by strings. Approval pulls one string. Fear pulls another. Anger pulls another. Comfort pulls another. Shame pulls another. Desire pulls another. And then they say, this is just who I am. But often, it is not who they are. It is what they have practiced obeying. That sentence matters. You become what you repeatedly obey. If you repeatedly obey the need to be validated, you become dependent. If you repeatedly obey fear, you become smaller. If you repeatedly obey anger, you become reactive. If you repeatedly obey comfort, you become fragile. If you repeatedly obey avoidance, you become divided against yourself. If you repeatedly obey every emotion, you stop having a direction and start having weather. That is why real strength cannot be reduced to be tough. Toughness is often misunderstood. Some people think strength means enduring everything without complaint. They swallow pain. They suppress emotion. They tolerate disrespect. They keep moving while falling apart. They act as if nothing hurts. And from the outside, it can look like discipline. But sometimes it is not discipline. Sometimes it is dissociation with better posture. Sometimes it is fear of appearing weak. Sometimes it is a person who learned that their pain had no room, so they turned silence into identity. Stoic strength is not the art of becoming stone. It is the art of not becoming owned. Owned by pain, owned by praise, owned by insult, owned by panic, owned by desire, owned by loss, owned by the first impulse that appears inside you. Because the first impulse is not always the best witness. Fear is a witness, but it is not always wise. Anger is a witness, but it is not always just. Desire is a witness, but it is not always truthful. Sadness is a witness, but it is not always prophetic. Anxiety is a witness, but it is not always accurate. Your emotions are real, but real does not always mean reliable. That is one of the most important distinctions a person can learn. A feeling can be real and still misread the situation. A feeling can be intense and still point you in the wrong direction. A feeling can come from an old wound and pretend it is responding to the present. A feeling can sound like intuition and still be fear wearing a cleaner voice. A feeling can demand action and still need observation first. So the goal is not to reject emotion. The goal is to stop handing emotion the entire government. Emotions should be heard, not crowned. And many people crown them. They let one wave decide the whole sea. They let 1 hour of fear cancel a year of effort. They let one moment of shame define an entire identity. They let one rejection explain their worth. They let one urge decide what their principles apparently meant. They let one night of loneliness reopen a door that nearly destroyed them. And then they call that honesty. But honesty is not obeying every internal movement. Sometimes honesty is saying, I feel this, but I do not trust what it wants me to do yet. That sentence can save you. I feel this, but I do not trust what it wants me to do yet. Because there is a space between what you feel and what you choose. And if that space is missing, your life becomes a chain reaction. Someone criticizes you and you attack. Someone leaves space and you chase. Something is difficult and you avoid. Something hurts and you numb. Something shames you and you hide. Something scares you and you shrink. Something flatters you and you sell yourself too cheaply. But if you build even a little space, something changes. You can feel the criticism and ask whether it contains truth. You can feel the fear and still take the next step. You can feel anger and choose clean language. You can feel shame and correct without disappearing. You can feel desire and still ask whether it honors your life. You can feel loneliness and not betray yourself to escape it. That space is small, but it is where character lives, not in the emotion, not in the outcome, in the space. This is why a pause is not weakness. A pause is not passivity. A pause is not cowardice. A pause is the mind refusing to be kidnapped. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait long enough for the first impulse to lose its crown. Not forever, not as avoidance, just long enough to see. Because the first version of you that appears under stress is often not your deepest self. It is your fastest defense, and your fastest defense is not always your wisest guide. Think about how many things in life are damaged by speed. A message sent too quickly, a promise made too quickly, a purchase made too quickly, a relationship entered too quickly, a relationship abandoned too quickly, a conclusion reached too quickly, a judgment made too quickly, a label placed on yourself too quickly. 5 fast minutes can create 5 slow months of repair. This is not exaggeration. Many people are not suffering because they lack intelligence. They are suffering because they keep letting unexamined states make executive decisions. And when the state passes, the consequence remains. That is why inner discipline matters. Not because discipline makes you morally superior. Not because discipline makes you less human. But because discipline protects your future from your temporary states. Temporary anger should not be allowed to write permanent damage. Temporary fear should not be allowed to design your entire life. Temporary shame should not be allowed to define your identity. Temporary desire should not be allowed to sell your values. Temporary comfort should not be allowed to steal your growth. Discipline is the protection of what matters from what is momentarily loud. That is a hard sentence, but it is useful. Discipline protects what matters from what is momentarily loud. And almost everything that destroys a person begins by becoming loud. The ego becomes loud. The fear becomes loud. The craving becomes loud. The comparison becomes loud. The old wound becomes loud. The desire to escape becomes loud. And if volume is your standard for truth, you will be ruled by whatever screams. A stable person learns another standard, not what is loud, but what is worthy, what is aligned, what remains true after the emotion cools. What will I respect tomorrow? What does this moment require from the person I am trying to become? That last question is powerful, not because it is poetic, because it interrupts the old identity. The old identity says, this is how I react. The new question asks, is this how I want to continue becoming? Because every reaction is not just a reaction. It is a vote for the kind of person you are rehearsing. If you choose avoidance, you rehearse avoidance. If you choose resentment, you rehearse resentment. If you choose honesty, you rehearse honesty. If you choose patience, you rehearse patience. If you choose self-respect, you rehearse self-respect. If you choose to pause, you rehearse freedom. No single vote defines everything, but repeated votes become identity. And identity is not built mainly by what you claim. It is built by what you return to. You can claim to value peace, but if you return to every fight, your body learns conflict. You can claim to value discipline, but if you return to every excuse, your mind learns distrust. You can claim to value dignity, but if you return to every place where you abandon yourself, your heart learns dependency. You can claim to value truth, but if you return to every comfortable lie, your character learns performance. This is why self-respect cannot be faked for long. Self-respect is not just a feeling. It is a record of what you did when you could have betrayed yourself. A record of whether your word had weight. A record of how you handled discomfort. A record of what you accepted when you were afraid. A record of what you repaired when you were wrong. A record of what you refused to sell. And if that record is broken, you do not fix it by hating yourself. You fix it by creating new evidence. Small evidence, daily evidence, quiet evidence. The kind nobody claps for. You said you would do one thing, and you did it. You wanted to react, and you paused. You made a mistake, and you corrected it without turning it into self-hatred. You wanted validation, and you acted from principle anyway. You wanted to escape, and you faced one small part. You wanted to chase, and you stayed with yourself. You wanted to collapse, and you did one useful thing. That evidence accumulates. At first it feels almost invisible. But over time, the mind begins to believe something new. Not because you repeated a slogan, because you created proof. I can trust myself a little more. That is one of the foundations of resilience. Not endless confidence. Trust. Trust that you can return. Trust that you can repair. Trust that you can face. Trust that you can choose better than your first impulse. Trust that you can be shaken without becoming completely owned. And trust is built by kept promises, not huge promises. Kept promises. This is why avoidance is so destructive. Avoidance is not only about delaying a task. It is about training yourself to become less believable to yourself. Every time you say, I will do it, and then do not, the task is not the only thing affected. Your word is affected. Your mind hears you. It notices. It records. At first, nothing seems to happen. You postpone one thing, then another, then another. You say tomorrow. You say next week. You say when I feel ready. You say when I have time. You say when I am less tired. But somewhere underneath all of that, your inner authority starts to weaken. Because a promise that repeatedly fails becomes noise. And when your own word becomes noise, discipline becomes harder. Not because you are lazy, because you no longer fully believe yourself. That is why procrastination often feels heavier than the task itself. The task may take 30 minutes, but the avoidance has been occupying your mind for 3 weeks. It has been following you into meals, into sleep, into conversations, into moments that should have been rest. And that is the cruel thing about avoidance. It does not give true rest. It gives temporary escape with interest. Rest restores. Avoidance drains. Rest leaves you clearer. Avoidance leaves a shadow. Rest says, I stopped because I needed recovery. Avoidance says, I stopped because I did not want to face myself. And the body knows the difference. You know the difference, even if you try to rename it. This is where many people need less motivation and more honesty. Not cruelty, honesty. I am avoiding. I am negotiating. I am waiting for a feeling that may not come. I am protecting my ego from imperfect action. I am calling this rest, but it is not rest. I am letting something small become a silent master. That honesty is not meant to shame you. It is meant to locate you. Because once you locate the problem, you can do something real. And the real thing does not need to be dramatic. In fact, drama is often another form of avoidance. People imagine a massive life transformation because one small action feels too plain. They want to become a new person, but they refuse to send the email. They want a new identity, but they refuse to clean the room. They want discipline, but they refuse the first 5 minutes. They want strength, but they refuse the small discomfort that strength requires today. The ego loves huge imaginary futures because they cost nothing in the present. But character is built through present payment, and the payment is usually small, annoyingly small. 1 page, 1 call, 1 apology, 1 workout, 1 paragraph, 1 cleaned surface, 1 honest conversation, 1 decision you have delayed, 1 boundary you stop pretending you do not need. Do not underestimate the first small action. The first small action breaks the spell. It tells the mind, this is not a monster. This is a task. This is not destiny. This is a pattern. This is not who I am forever. This is what I have been rehearsing. And once something is seen as a pattern, it can be interrupted. That interruption is the beginning of change, not the end. The beginning, because you are not trying to become perfect. You are trying to become less automatic, less available to your own sabotage, less obedient to temporary states, less dependent on outer confirmation, less willing to abandon yourself at the first sign of discomfort. And that requires repetition, not intensity. Repetition. Intensity gives you a story. Repetition gives you a structure. A person can feel deeply inspired for one night and still be the same next month. But a person who practices one act of self-command every day will eventually become difficult to move in the old way. Not impossible to move, difficult. Harder to manipulate, harder to provoke, harder to distract, harder to buy with approval, harder to break with criticism, harder to seduce with comfort, harder to scare away from the necessary. That is real progress, quiet but real. And quiet progress is often the most durable kind, because it is not dependent on being seen. This is another point people miss. A transformation that needs immediate applause is still tied to the old chain. If you need everyone to notice that you are changing, then part of you is still asking permission to change. If you need every act of discipline to become visible, then discipline is still being used for image. If you need every boundary to be admired, then the boundary may still be seeking validation. There is nothing wrong with being encouraged, but encouragement cannot be the engine. Because when encouragement disappears, the work disappears with it. That is why some of the most important changes must begin in silence, not secrecy. Silence. Silence gives the work roots. It protects the early stage from performance. It lets you build before explaining. It lets your character collect evidence before your ego collects praise. And many people skip that. They announce too early. They promise too loudly. They create an identity around the change before the change has weight. Then the announcement gives them a reward. People respond. They feel seen. They feel new. But the behavior has not yet been tested by boredom, stress, disappointment, fatigue, temptation, or delay. And behavior that has not been tested is not yet character. It is intention. Intention matters. But intention is not enough. Life does not test what you meant. It tests what you return to under pressure. And pressure always comes. That is why strength cannot be based on a good mood. A good mood is too fragile. Strength has to be practiced when the mood is not helping. When you do not feel noble. When you do not feel calm. When you do not feel patient. When you do not feel confident. When you do not feel seen. When you do not feel ready. When you do not feel healed. That is where the work becomes real. Because if you can only act well when you feel well, your character is still dependent on weather, and weather changes. A person with inner training learns to act from values even when the emotional weather is bad. Not perfectly, but more often, and that more often matters. Most life change is not the difference between always and never. It is the difference between less and more. Less reaction, more pause, less avoidance. More action, less self-hatred. More correction, less possession. More presence, less approval-seeking. More integrity, less panic. More clarity, less noise. More center. Small differences repeated become large differences lived. But this also requires a mature relationship with failure, because you will fail. You will react again. You will avoid again. You will seek approval again. You will turn a feeling into a command again. You will lose your center again. The question is not whether you will fall out of alignment. The question is how long you stay away after noticing. That is a more useful measure. Some people fall once and turn it into a whole identity. I always do this. I never change. I ruin everything. This proves I cannot. That language is dangerous. Because it turns a moment into a prison. A mistake says something happened. Shame says you are the thing that happened. And once shame takes over, learning becomes difficult. Because the mind does not want to learn. It wants to hide. It wants to defend. It wants to disappear. So if you want resilience, you must learn to fail without becoming the failure. That does not mean excusing yourself. It means staying available for correction. There is a difference between responsibility and self-destruction. Responsibility says, I need to see this clearly. Self-destruction says, I am worthless because this happened. Responsibility says, what can I repair? Self-destruction says, there is no point. Responsibility says, this was mine to correct. Self-destruction says, this is who I am forever. Only one of those leads to growth. And it is not the one that sounds harshest. A lot of people confuse harshness with accountability. They think if they punish themselves enough, they will improve. But punishment often creates hiding. Hiding creates more avoidance. Avoidance creates more shame. And the cycle repeats. Real accountability is cleaner. It does not need theatrical self-hatred. It needs truth and action. What happened? What was my part? What needs repair? What will I do differently next time? What system or practice must change so this is less likely to repeat? Those questions are not soft. They are serious. They do not flatter you. They do not destroy you. They return you to agency. And agency is the antidote to shame. Because shame freezes, agency moves. Even a small movement matters. Repair the message, make the call. Admit the mistake, adjust the plan. Apologize without performing pain. Continue the work. Restart the practice. Tell the truth. Stop pretending confusion is innocence. Stop pretending delay is strategy. Stop pretending self-hatred is humility. Humility is not hating yourself. Humility is being willing to see yourself accurately. Accurately, not inflated, not destroyed. Seen. And being seen by yourself is harder than being seen by others. Because others may only see moments. You know the pattern. You know where you lie to yourself. You know where you dramatize. You know where you avoid. You know where you exaggerate your helplessness. You know where you pretend not to know what you already know. That is why internal honesty can feel brutal, but it is also merciful. Because once you stop pretending, you can stop wasting energy protecting the pretense. And energy returns. Energy that was trapped in defense. Energy that was trapped in image. Energy that was trapped in avoidance. Energy that was trapped in trying to control how everyone interprets you. Energy that was trapped in suffering losses before they happen. Energy that was trapped in fighting reality. That energy can return to action, to repair, to discipline, to presence, to real life. And this is where the theme of loss becomes unavoidable. Because much of human instability comes from trying to keep what cannot be guaranteed. You try to keep people from changing. You try to keep time from passing. You try to keep the body from aging. You try to keep reputation safe from every mouth. You try to keep plans untouched. You try to keep love free from uncertainty. You try to keep success permanent. You try to keep life from surprising you. But life is not a possession. It is participation. And participation means you care without owning the outcome. That is a difficult art. To care deeply without gripping violently. To love without possession. To build without worshiping the result. To plan without believing the plan is sacred. To enjoy without pretending it cannot end. To hold something with gratitude instead of panic. Seneca often returned to this kind of preparation, not as a gloomy exercise, not as a celebration of loss, but as a way to wake the mind from entitlement, because entitlement makes everything fragile. When you believe something is guaranteed, you stop seeing it. You stop tasting it. You stop honoring it. You stop treating it as alive. You turn gifts into furniture. People become furniture. Health becomes furniture. Time becomes furniture. Opportunity becomes furniture. A normal morning becomes furniture. Until something threatens to remove it. Then suddenly you see. But fear is an expensive way to wake up. Wisdom tries to wake up earlier. It says, this is here today. Treat it accordingly. Not with panic, with presence. There is a huge difference. Panic says, I may lose this, so I must control everything. Presence says, I may lose this, so I will stop being absent while it is here. Panic suffocates. Presence honors. Panic grips. Presence attends. Panic turns love into surveillance. Presence turns love into care. Panic turns ambition into desperation. Presence turns ambition into disciplined effort. Panic turns life into defense. Presence turns life into participation. So the awareness of loss should not make you colder. It should make you more awake, more careful with your words, more honest with your time, more selective with your battles, more grateful for ordinary things, more willing to act before the door closes, more willing to stop wasting entire days on noise that will mean nothing in a year. Because some things will end. Some people will leave. Some versions of you will die. Some plans will fail. Some seasons will close. That is not pessimism. That is the condition of being alive. The question is whether this truth makes you cling harder or live better. Many people cling. They cling to relationships that have become cages. They cling to identities they have outgrown. They cling to resentment because it keeps the past emotionally present. They cling to fear because fear feels like preparation. They cling to control because uncertainty feels like weakness. They cling to pain because pain became proof that something mattered. But clinging is not the same as caring. Sometimes clinging is fear refusing to mourn. Sometimes clinging is ego refusing to lose. Sometimes clinging is a person trying to freeze life because they do not trust themselves to survive change. And that is the deeper issue. It is not just fear of losing the thing. It is fear of who you will be without it. Who am I if this relationship ends? Who am I if this role disappears? Who am I if this plan fails? Who am I if they no longer admire me? Who am I if I was wrong? Who am I if I have to begin again? These questions frighten people because their identity has been built too externally. If too much of you lives in something that can leave, then when it leaves, you do not just grieve it, you disappear with it. That is why inner center matters. Not so you never suffer loss, but so loss does not erase the whole self. You can grieve without vanishing. You can miss without surrendering your dignity. You can begin again without pretending the previous chapter meant nothing. You can let go without turning cold. You can honor what was without living chained to it. That is not easy, but it is possible, and it begins before loss. It begins in how you hold things while you have them. Hold with gratitude, not entitlement. Hold with presence, not panic. Hold with care, not possession. Hold with awareness, not denial. Because when you hold something as if you own eternity, you become careless. When you hold something as temporary, you may become more alive. Not more afraid, more alive. This is one of the paradoxes of wisdom. Remembering that life is fragile can make life richer because it removes the illusion that you can postpone being present forever. It confronts the lie of later. Later I will say it. Later I will begin. Later I will forgive. Later I will rest. Later I will build. Later I will change. Later I will stop wasting myself. Later I will become someone I respect. But later is one of the most seductive forms of self-betrayal. It sounds reasonable. It sounds patient. It sounds strategic. But sometimes later is just fear speaking politely. And life is shorter than the ego believes, not as a motivational cliche, as a structural fact. You do not have infinite mornings. You do not have infinite chances to repair certain things. You do not have infinite years to become the person you keep describing. You do not have infinite energy to spend on battles that feed nothing. That should not make you desperate. It should make you serious. Serious about attention, serious about promises, serious about what you allow to govern you, serious about what you postpone, serious about who receives your best energy, serious about whether you are living or constantly preparing to live. Because a person can spend years preparing emotionally for a life they never actually enter. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel safe, waiting to feel chosen, waiting to feel certain, waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel healed. But readiness often comes after movement, not before. Clarity often comes after engagement, not before. Confidence often comes after evidence, not before. Healing often deepens through living differently, not through waiting until nothing hurts. So if you wait until fear disappears, fear becomes your calendar. If you wait until approval arrives, approval becomes your gatekeeper. If you wait until life becomes certain, uncertainty becomes your prison. And if you wait until you are perfectly strong, weakness will keep defining the terms. At some point, you must move while still human, still afraid, still imperfect, still uncertain, still carrying some pain, still learning how to pause, still not fully ready. That is not failure. That is how people change. They do not change from a clean place. They change from the middle of the mess, from the real day, from the imperfect morning, from the task they avoided, from the conversation they feared, from the emotion that used to control them, from the place where they used to abandon themselves. That is where the door is, not somewhere else. Right there. And the first step is not dramatic. It is not a speech. It is not a total reinvention. It is a refusal, a small refusal. I refuse to let this comment own my entire day. I refuse to let this fear make the decision alone. I refuse to let this mistake become my name. I refuse to let this silence define my worth. I refuse to let this task keep living in my mind rent-free. I refuse to let this old wound be the only author of my future. I refuse to hand over the keys this quickly. That refusal is the beginning of dignity. Not loud dignity, quiet dignity. The kind that does not need to insult anyone. The kind that does not need revenge. The kind that does not need applause. The kind that simply says, my response is still mine. And once a person begins to protect their response, life changes. Not because everything gets easier, but because everything no longer gets the same access. Criticism may enter, but it does not automatically become identity. Fear may enter, but it does not automatically become law. Desire may enter, but it does not automatically become permission. Pain may enter, but it does not automatically become behavior. Loss may enter, but it does not automatically become self-erasure. Chaos may enter, but it does not automatically become the inner ruler. That is what inner strength looks like in practice. Access control, not emotional absence. Access control. You decide what gets a vote. You decide what gets a voice. You decide what gets a seat. You decide what gets the keys. And most people have never trained that. Their inner world is an unlocked room. Everything walks in. A memory, a comment, a fear, a comparison, a craving, a headline, a person's mood, a random silence, a fantasy, a regret. And suddenly the room is full. No wonder they are exhausted. They are hosting too many uninvited authorities. So the question becomes, what are you allowing to govern the room? Not what enters, what governs. Because you cannot stop every thought from appearing. You cannot stop every emotion from rising. You cannot stop every memory from returning. You cannot stop every difficult person from existing. You cannot stop every uncertainty from disturbing you. But you can practice refusing government to what does not deserve government. That practice is the spine of the whole script. And in the next part, we go deeper into the hidden places where people give that government away, not only to fear, not only to approval, but to the need to be right, the need to be understood, the addiction to inner noise, and the quiet collapse that happens when someone loses the ability to sit with themselves without reaching for distraction. Because sometimes the world is not stealing your peace. Sometimes you have been leaving the door open. And that sentence is uncomfortable because it returns responsibility to you. Not blame, responsibility. There is a difference. Blame says, everything is your fault. Responsibility says, something is still in your hands. Blame crushes. Responsibility returns power. Blame makes you smaller. Responsibility makes you available to act. And this distinction matters because many people hear any talk of inner strength as if it were an accusation. As if saying protect your mind means nothing outside you ever matters. That is not what this means. Some things are genuinely painful. Some people do damage. Some circumstances are unjust. Some losses are real. Some pressures are heavy. Some seasons of life do not feel like training. They feel like survival. So, no. This is not about pretending that everything is internal. It is about refusing to surrender the part that still is. Because even in difficult conditions, there is usually one territory left. Small maybe, unstable maybe, but real. Your next response, your next word, your next action, your next refusal to make things worse, your next attempt to return to yourself. Sometimes that is all you have, but sometimes that is enough to begin. The danger is that many people abandon that territory because they cannot control the entire battlefield. They say, if I cannot control everything, then nothing matters. But that is not wisdom. That is despair pretending to be realism. You do not need control over everything for your response to matter. A small act of self-command inside chaos is not useless. It is the first brick of return. When you choose not to send the message written from panic, that matters. When you choose not to turn one mistake into a complete identity, that matters. When you choose to do one necessary thing after weeks of avoidance, that matters. When you choose to hear criticism without immediately becoming either defensive or destroyed, that matters. When you choose to rest honestly instead of escaping unconsciously, that matters. When you choose to grieve without letting grief become the only author of your future, that matters. These are not small because they are quiet. They are foundational because they are quiet. Most of what builds a person happens without an audience. The world loves visible transformation, before and after, announcement, and applause. Big decision and dramatic music. But character is usually built in moments too plain to post. A person becomes more stable while washing dishes and choosing not to spiral, while sitting in the car and choosing not to send the angry reply, while opening the laptop and doing the first 10 minutes of the thing they avoided, while hearing a comment and deciding not to build an entire identity crisis around it, while feeling the old craving for approval and choosing to act from principle anyway. No one sees that, but the mind sees it, and the mind keeps records. It records betrayals, but it also records returns. That is why you must stop thinking of inner strength as a mood. It is not a mood, it is a record of returns. How many times did you come back to what mattered? How many times did you come back after shame? How many times did you come back after fear? How many times did you come back after delay? How many times did you come back after losing your temper? How many times did you come back after disappointing yourself? That record becomes trust, not the childish trust that says, I will never fail. The adult trust that says, even when I fail, I know how to return. That is much stronger, because a person who expects never to fail is fragile. One mistake can ruin the entire self-image, but a person who knows how to return becomes harder to destroy. Not because they fall less. Sometimes they still fall, but they do not build a permanent home at the bottom. They learn the route back, and the route back begins with one thing most people avoid: seeing clearly, not dramatically, clearly. There is a difference between clarity and drama. Drama says, I cannot believe this happened. Or why am I like this? Everything is ruined. Nothing ever changes. I always do this. Clarity says, this happened. This was my part. This is what I felt. This is what I obeyed. This is what I need to repair. This is what I will practice next. Drama burns energy. Clarity directs energy. Drama feels intense but often changes nothing. Clarity feels quieter, but it can move your life. And a great deal of maturity is learning to prefer clarity over emotional theater. That does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop confusing intensity with depth. Some people are addicted to emotional intensity because it makes life feel meaningful. If there is conflict, they feel alive. If there is uncertainty, they obsess. If there is silence, they create a story. If there is peace, they get uncomfortable. If there is a simple path forward, they complicate it, not because they consciously want suffering, but because their nervous system learned to associate chaos with importance. And this is a dangerous pattern, because when peace finally appears, they do not recognize it as peace. They experience it as emptiness. When a relationship is stable, they suspect boredom. When a day is calm, they search for something to worry about. When no one is attacking them, they attack themselves. When nothing urgent is happening, they create inner urgency. That is not strength. That is withdrawal from chaos. And if you have lived too long in reaction, calm can feel suspicious at first. This is why serenity must be trained. Not because serenity is unnatural, but because chaos may have become familiar. And the familiar often feels safer than the healthy. A person can be attached to stress, attached to proving, attached to chasing, attached to crisis, attached to being needed, attached to emotional storms, attached to the identity of the one who endures. And if that identity is threatened, they may unconsciously return to what hurts, because at least they know how to exist there. That is one of the hidden traps of growth. You may say you want peace, but part of you may still be loyal to chaos because chaos gave you a role. In chaos, you know who to be: the rescuer, the victim, the fighter, the abandoned one, the misunderstood one, the strong one, the one who can take anything, the one who never needs anyone, the one who always returns, the one who always fixes, the one who always waits. And if you let go of that role, there is a frightening question underneath. Who are you without the pattern? Who are you if you stop chasing? Who are you if you stop proving? Who are you if you stop reacting? Who are you if you stop needing the wound to explain you? Who are you if you are no longer the person who survives everything in silence? This is why change is harder than advice makes it sound. You are not only changing behavior, you are letting go of identities that once helped you survive, that deserves respect, but it still requires movement. You can honor the old defense without obeying it forever. You can say, "Thank you for protecting me when I had no better tools. But you are not allowed to run my whole life anymore." That is a mature way to grow. Not by hating the old version of yourself, not by pretending it was stupid, not by shaming it, but by retiring it from leadership. Because sometimes the version of you that kept you alive is not the version that can help you live well. Survival tools are not always life tools. Hypervigilance may protect you in danger, but it will exhaust you in peace. Emotional shutdown may protect you from pain, but it will also block intimacy. People-pleasing may protect you from rejection, but it will cost you self-respect. Anger may protect you from feeling powerless, but it may also destroy trust. Avoidance may protect you from immediate discomfort, but it will build long-term fear. Control may protect you from uncertainty, but it will suffocate everything alive. So the question is not, was this pattern useful at some point? Maybe it was. The better question is this pattern still worthy of authority? And often, the honest answer is no. No, fear should not have that much authority. No, shame should not have that much authority. No, approval should not have that much authority. No, the past should not have that much authority. No, the need to be right should not have that much authority. No, the old wound should not have that much authority. This is what it means to reclaim inner government. You do not kill every voice inside you. You reorder the hierarchy. Fear can speak, but it does not rule. Anger can speak, but it does not rule. Desire can speak, but it does not rule. Sadness can speak, but it does not rule. Memory can speak, but it does not rule. Your values must rule. Your chosen direction must rule. Your deepest commitments must rule. And this is where many people discover they have never actually named their values. They have reactions. They have preferences. They have desires. They have wounds. They have opinions. They have habits. But values? Clear values? Lived values? Tested values? That is different. A value is not something you admire when life is easy. A value is something you protect when it costs you. If you say you value peace, but you feed every unnecessary fight, peace is not yet ruling. If you say you value honesty, but you hide from every uncomfortable truth, honesty is not yet ruling. If you say you value discipline, but comfort wins every negotiation, discipline is not yet ruling. If you say you value dignity, but you abandon yourself whenever loneliness appears, dignity is not yet ruling. If you say you value love, but you turn love into control, love is not yet ruling. This is not meant to shame you. It is meant to make things visible. Because a value that does not survive discomfort is still mostly an idea. A value becomes part of you when it starts influencing your behavior under pressure. That is why pressure is revealing. Pressure does not always create your weakness. Often, it exposes your hierarchy. It shows what actually has authority. You can say you value calm, but if anger gets the first and final word, anger has authority. You can say you value freedom, but if approval decides your choices, approval has authority. You can say you value growth, but if shame makes you hide from every mistake, shame has authority. You can say you value presence, but if your phone owns your attention every quiet moment, distraction has authority. Pressure shows the throne, and that is uncomfortable, but useful. Because once you know what is sitting on the throne, you can begin the work of removing it. Not with one dramatic gesture, with repeated acts of refusal. I will not let this fear decide alone. I will not let this insult define me. I will not let this silence make me beg. I will not let this mistake become my name. I will not let this comfort steal my word. I will not let this old story govern today. That kind of refusal is not negative. It is protective. It protects the person you are building from the pattern you have rehearsed. And at first, the pattern will protest. This is important. Do not expect your old patterns to disappear politely. They will argue. Fear will say, this is dangerous. Approval will say, they will not like you. Comfort will say, you can start tomorrow. Anger will say, you cannot let this pass. Shame will say, hide. The wound will say, this always happens. The ego will say, win. And you may feel pulled. That does not mean you are failing. It means the old government is losing automatic control. When a pattern that used to rule without question now has to argue, you have already created distance. That distance is progress, even if you still struggle, even if you still fall, even if the pull is strong. The fact that you can see the pull is already a shift. Because before, you called it me. Now you can say, this is a pattern. That language matters. This is a pattern gives you space. This is me gives it permanence. Do not turn every pattern into identity. You are not every impulse you have practiced. You are not every fear that visits. You are not every craving that rises. You are not every defense that once helped you survive. You are the one who can learn to respond differently. That may sound simple, but for some people, it is life-changing because they have spent years believing they are identical to their reactions. I am just anxious. I am just angry. I am just avoidant. I am just intense. I am just someone who overthinks. I am just someone who cannot let go. No, that may be what you have practiced. That may be what you learned. That may be what your nervous system repeats. That may be what pain shaped. But what was shaped can be reshaped. Slowly, imperfectly, with friction. But it can be reshaped. And one of the tools for reshaping is attention. Not obsessive self-analysis. Attention. The ability to notice what is happening inside you before it becomes behavior. Notice the tightening. Notice the story. Notice the urge. Notice the old script. Notice the desire to explain too much. Notice the need to check. Notice the impulse to defend. Notice the fantasy of revenge. Notice the wish to disappear. Notice the comfort of postponing. Notice the moment where you almost hand over the keys. That moment is gold. Because before the behavior, there is usually a signal. The body knows. The mind starts narrating. The emotion starts building a case. The old pattern starts preparing a familiar move. And if you can notice that early, you gain choice, not total control. Choice. And choice is enough to begin breaking a chain. Most people want transformation to feel like a new personality. But in practice, transformation often feels like noticing 5 seconds earlier than you used to. 5 seconds before the message. 5 seconds before the excuse. 5 seconds before the purchase. 5 seconds before the old apology you do not mean. 5 seconds before the self-insult. 5 seconds before the emotional explosion. 5 seconds before you betray your own boundary. That is not glamorous, but it is powerful. 5 seconds of awareness can prevent 5 years of repetition if you use them well enough, often enough. And then after noticing, you need one more thing, a replacement action. Because you cannot only say no to a pattern, you need to say yes to something else. If you do not send the angry message, what do you do instead? You wait, you write it somewhere private, you breathe, you come back later with cleaner language. If you do not avoid the task, what do you do instead? You work for 10 minutes, you open the document, you make the call, you create the first step. If you do not chase approval, what do you do instead? You act according to your standard. You let silence be silence. You stop begging for emotional confirmation. If you do not collapse into shame, what do you do instead? You name the mistake. You repair what can be repaired. You extract the lesson. You continue. A pattern weakens when it is replaced, not only when it is condemned. Many people condemn their patterns all day. They hate their anxiety. They hate their procrastination. They hate their dependence on approval. They hate their anger. They hate their inconsistency. But hatred does not automatically create a new path. It often creates more tension, more shame, more hiding. The question is not only, what do I want to stop? The question is, what do I practice instead? That is where change becomes concrete. Not I will be calmer. I will pause before answering. Not I will be disciplined. I will do 10 minutes before checking my phone. Not I will stop needing approval. I will make one decision today without explaining it to everyone. Not I will stop being ashamed. I will correct one mistake without insulting myself. Not I will be stronger. I will keep one promise to myself today. Specific practice beats vague ambition. Every time. Because vague ambition gives you identity. Specific practice gives you evidence. And evidence is what the mind needs. The mind is not convinced by speeches for long. It is convinced by repeated proof. This is why some people consume endless content about strength and remain unchanged. They listen, they agree, they feel seen, they feel temporarily organized. Then they go back to the same automatic behaviors, not because the content was useless, because they never converted insight into practice. Insight without practice becomes emotional decoration. It makes the room look better, but it does not change the foundation. Practice changes the foundation, and practice is usually less exciting than insight. That is why it works. Excitement fades, practice remains. So if you are listening to this and something is hitting you, do not let it remain as a feeling. Choose one place where you will practice. One, not your whole life. One place, the next difficult conversation, the next morning, the next task, the next emotion, the next urge to seek validation, the next mistake, the next memory, the next moment you want to hand over the keys. Pick one doorway and train there, because the doorway is not random. The place where you repeatedly lose yourself is the exact place where your next freedom is hidden. If approval owns you, freedom begins in doing right without being seen. If fear owns you, freedom begins in one action taken while fear is present. If shame owns you, freedom begins in correction without self-erasure. If anger owns you, freedom begins in language that keeps your dignity. If avoidance owns you, freedom begins in the first small task done before negotiation. If loss owns you, freedom begins in loving with presence instead of possession. This is not mystical, it is practical. But practical does not mean shallow. The deepest changes are often practical. A breath, a pause, a word not spoken, a task begun, a truth admitted, a boundary held, a repair made, a silence tolerated, a loss grieved without becoming your whole name. These are small hinges, and small hinges move large doors. Now there is another place where people give away inner government, and it is subtle. The need to be understood. This one feels innocent, even noble. Of course we want to be understood. Of course we want our intentions to be seen fairly. Of course it hurts when someone misunderstands us. Of course, it is painful when a person reduces you to one mistake, one moment, one rumor, one interpretation. But the need to be understood can become a prison when you cannot stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Some explanations are useful. Others are self-abandonment in formal language. You keep explaining, not because there is a real possibility of clarity, but because you cannot tolerate being misread. You keep defending, not because truth is being built, but because your ego cannot survive the existence of a false version of you in someone else's mind. You keep returning to the conversation, not because it is productive, but because you want control over the story. And that is understandable, but it is also exhausting. Because you cannot enter every mind and correct every distortion. You cannot supervise every interpretation. You cannot force every person to carry a fair version of you. Some people will misunderstand because they lack context. Some because they lack maturity. Some because misunderstanding you benefits them. Some because they need you to be the villain for their own story to stay intact. Some because they are reacting from their own wounds. Some because they simply do not care enough to see carefully. And if your peace requires universal accurate interpretation, you will never have peace. This is one of the hardest freedoms, letting some people be wrong about you without rushing to be their prisoner. Not because truth does not matter. Truth matters. But not every courtroom deserves your presence. Not every accusation deserves your nervous system. Not every misunderstanding can be fixed by more words. Sometimes clarity is not blocked by lack of explanation. It is blocked by lack of willingness. And if willingness is absent, your explanation becomes performance inside a locked room. That does not mean you never speak. Speak when it is needed. Clarify when it is useful. Take responsibility when you are wrong. Defend what must be defended. But learn the difference between speaking from truth and speaking from panic. Truth is usually cleaner. Panic over-explains. Truth can stand. Panic begs. Truth clarifies. Panic performs. Truth respects itself. Panic tries to control the audience. And many people are not actually trying to tell the truth. They are trying to regulate their anxiety through someone else's agreement. That is a hard thing to admit. Sometimes you do not want closure. You want emotional anesthesia. You want the other person to say the thing that lets your body relax. You want them to understand, approve, admit, apologize, confirm, recognize. And if they do not, you feel trapped. But the trap is not always the situation. Sometimes the trap is believing your nervous system cannot calm down without their permission. That belief gives enormous power away, because now another person holds your inner switch. If they respond correctly, you breathe. If they do not, you spiral. If they see you fairly, you exist. If they misread you, you collapse. That is a dangerous arrangement. You can desire understanding without needing it as oxygen. You can value repair without begging for it from someone who refuses maturity. You can explain once with dignity and stop turning your life into a courtroom. Because at some point, the desire to be understood can become another form of self-loss. And the mature question becomes, have I spoken clearly enough to remain in integrity? Not. Have I controlled what they believe? Those are different questions. One belongs to you, the other does not. Again, the line appears. What is up to you? Your clarity, your honesty, your tone, your willingness to repair, your decision not to distort, your decision not to lie, your decision not to manipulate. What is not up to you, whether another person receives it fairly, whether they are ready, whether they admit what they know, whether they tell the story correctly, whether they ever give you the version of justice you wanted. And if you cannot separate those, you will keep sacrificing yourself at the altar of being understood. This also applies to being right. The need to be right is one of the most socially acceptable forms of inner slavery. It feels like intelligence. It feels like principle. It feels like justice. But often, underneath, it is ego panic. The ego says, if I am wrong, I lose status. If I do not answer, I lose power. If they do not admit it, I lose control. If I let this pass, I am weak. So it fights, it corrects, it interrupts, it escalates. It turns conversations into trials. It turns relationships into debates. It turns disagreement into identity threat. And then it wonders why peace is so rare. There is nothing wrong with truth. There is something deeply wrong with needing to win every moment truth appears. Because sometimes truth is served better by patience. Sometimes by silence, sometimes by timing, sometimes by walking away, sometimes by letting reality teach what your words cannot. Not every correct statement is useful in the moment. Not every argument is worth entering. Not every person wants truth. Some only want victory. And if you accept every invitation to prove yourself, your life will be filled with arenas you never consciously chose. This is especially important in a world built for reaction. The internet trains people to confuse response with existence. Something appears. You must react. Someone says something wrong. You must correct. Someone insults. You must answer. Someone misunderstands. You must explain. Someone attacks your group, your idea, your identity, your taste, your opinion. You must enter. And if you do this long enough, your attention becomes public property. Anyone with a provocation can rent space in your nervous system. That is not freedom. That is emotional availability to strangers. You do not need to be reachable by every stimulus. You do not need to have an opinion in every conflict. You do not need to turn every disagreement into a personal event. You do not need to bleed attention into every manufactured urgency. Protecting your mind sometimes means disappointing the algorithm inside you. The inner algorithm that wants outrage. The inner algorithm that wants comparison. The inner algorithm that wants to check. The inner algorithm that wants to prove. The inner algorithm that wants to be seen reacting. Modern life does not only attack your peace from outside, it trains you to attack your own peace from within. You begin to crave the very things that destabilize you. You check what makes you anxious. You revisit what makes you angry. You compare yourself to what makes you feel behind. You consume what makes your mind noisy. You return to the person, the page, the memory, the argument, the fantasy, the fear, and then you say you want calm. But part of you is feeding the fire. Again, not to blame you, to make the mechanism visible. Because once the mechanism is visible, the question becomes unavoidable. What am I feeding? Not what do I want. What am I feeding? You may want peace, but feed comparison. You may want discipline, but feed distraction. You may want dignity, but feed the need to be chosen. You may want healing, but feed the old wound with constant rereading. You may want clarity, but feed noise. You may want freedom, but feed fear. Your life moves toward what you feed, not only what you desire. That is one of the most practical truths there is. Desire points. Feeding builds. You can desire a strong mind while feeding everything that weakens it. You can desire a calm life while feeding every source of internal chaos. You can desire self-respect while feeding every habit that teaches you not to trust yourself. So ask the question plainly. What am I feeding daily? With my attention, with my repetition, with my conversations, with my excuses, with my private thoughts, with my clicks, with my delays, with my fantasies, with my resentment, with my silence, with my actions. This question is uncomfortable because it bypasses your self-image. Everyone wants to identify with their desire. I want to grow. I want peace. I want discipline. I want wisdom. I want a better life. Fine, but what are you feeding? That answer is usually more honest. And if you do not like the answer, good. Not because you should hate yourself, because now you can change the diet of your mind. A mind has a diet. Not only food, inputs, stories, people, images, arguments, thoughts repeated until they become roads, fears rehearsed until they feel like prophecy, excuses repeated until they feel like personality, comparisons repeated until your own life feels unacceptable. If you feed your mind disorder every morning, do not be surprised when your day feels invaded. If you feed your mind resentment every night, do not be surprised when your sleep carries a war. If you feed your mind approval hunger every hour, do not be surprised when silence feels like starvation. Again, the point is not perfection. The point is awareness. You cannot live untouched by modern noise, but you can stop pretending the noise has no effect. You can stop leaving every door open. You can choose what enters first. You can choose what repeats. You can choose when to close the room. You can choose not to turn every mental visitor into a resident. That is inner hygiene. And inner hygiene is not glamorous, but without it, wisdom becomes impossible. Because a mind filled with constant noise cannot hear its own values clearly. It can only react. And reaction is exactly what we are trying to outgrow. Now, as this gets deeper, there is a risk. A person can hear all of this and turn it into another weapon against themselves. They can say, I am weak because I still react. I am immature because I still care. I am failing because I still need validation sometimes. I am not strong because I still feel fear. Do not do that. That is the old pattern trying to use new language. You do not become free by hating the parts of you that are still learning. You become free by training them firmly, honestly, consistently, but not with contempt. Contempt does not create wisdom. It creates division, and inner division is already part of the problem. A divided person spends half their energy attacking themselves and the other half trying to function. That is exhausting. You need a different internal tone. Not soft in a fake way, not indulgent, not careless. A tone that is both firm and loyal. Firm enough to tell the truth. Loyal enough not to abandon you when the truth hurts. Imagine an inner voice that can say, that was not aligned. Repair it. Without adding, you are worthless. Imagine an inner voice that can say, you are avoiding. Start now. Without adding, you never do anything right. Imagine an inner voice that can say, you are seeking approval again. Come back. Without adding, you are pathetic. Imagine an inner voice that can say, you are afraid. Take one step anyway. Without adding, you should not feel this. That is the kind of voice that builds. It does not flatter you. It does not destroy you. It leads. Many people do not have an inner leader. They have an inner critic, an inner child, an inner alarm system, an inner performer, an inner prosecutor, and an inner escape artist, all speaking at once. No wonder they feel chaotic. Part of maturity is developing an inner leader, a voice that can hear the fear without letting fear run the meeting, a voice that can hear anger without giving anger the weapon, a voice that can hear sadness without letting sadness erase the future. A voice that can hear desire without selling the principles. A voice that can hear fatigue and choose true rest instead of unconscious avoidance. That inner leader is not born fully formed. It is built through practice. Every time you pause, it strengthens. Every time you keep a promise, it strengthens. Every time you repair, it strengthens. Every time you choose clarity over drama, it strengthens. Every time you refuse to crown a temporary state, it strengthens. And after enough repetition, it becomes easier to access. Not automatic forever, but easier. This is why the path is not about one heroic transformation. It is about changing who gets the microphone inside you. For years, maybe fear had the microphone. Maybe shame had it. Maybe approval had it. Maybe anger had it. Maybe avoidance had it. Maybe the past had it. Now you begin to take it back, not by silencing everything violently, but by choosing the order. Values first, impulse second, truth first, image second, action first, mood second, dignity first, approval second, presence first, possession second, repair first, self-punishment second. That ordering changes a life. Because chaos does not disappear, but hierarchy returns. And a person with hierarchy inside can move through complexity without being shattered by every piece of it. This is what real serenity means. It is not that nothing enters, it is that not everything rules. And once you understand that, you can stop chasing the impossible goal of never being disturbed. You will be disturbed. You are human. But you can train so that disturbance does not automatically become direction. That is the difference. A storm can happen, but it does not have to become your compass. Now we need to bring this down again, because lofty ideas are easy to admire. Concrete life is where they are tested. Tomorrow, or maybe later today, something will happen that gives you a chance to practice this. It may not be dramatic, it may be ordinary. Someone may speak to you in a tone you do not like. You may feel ignored. You may remember something painful. You may face a task you keep avoiding. You may compare your life with someone else's. You may feel the urge to check, to prove, to explain, to buy, to escape, to chase, to attack, to collapse. That moment is not an interruption of the path. That moment is the path. Do not wait for a better training ground. Your actual life is the training ground. Your actual relationships, your actual work, your actual fears, your actual habits, your actual phone, your actual evenings, your actual mistakes, your actual loneliness, your actual responsibilities. Not the ideal version, the real one. And the real one is messy. Good, that means it has material. You cannot practice courage without fear. You cannot practice patience without irritation. You cannot practice discipline without resistance. You cannot practice self-respect without temptation to abandon yourself. You cannot practice serenity without disturbance. The thing you wish would disappear may be the exact condition that allows the practice to become real. That does not mean you should seek suffering. Do not romanticize difficulty. But when difficulty appears, do not waste it entirely. Let it show you something. Where am I too easily moved? Where am I still outsourcing my worth? Where am I calling reaction authenticity? Where am I calling avoidance rest? Where am I calling fear intuition? Where am I calling control love? Where am I calling self-hatred accountability? Where am I calling noise information? These questions can hurt, but they also cut through fog. And sometimes a clean cut is kinder than a comfortable fog, because fog lets you continue. The cut wakes you up. Now, if this is working as it should, you may already be thinking of a specific place in your life. A specific person, a specific pattern, a specific task, a specific fear, a specific way you lose yourself. Good. Do not make it abstract. The mind loves abstraction because abstraction does not require obedience. Peace is abstract. Not sending the message tonight is concrete. Discipline is abstract. Opening the document for 10 minutes is concrete. Self-respect is abstract. Not begging for clarity from someone who keeps giving confusion is concrete. Emotional maturity is abstract. So waiting before responding while angry is concrete. Letting go is abstract. Not reopening the door just because loneliness knocked is concrete. Choose the concrete. That is where the transformation begins to have weight. And yes, it may feel small, But small is not the opposite of serious. Small is often the way serious things enter daily life. A huge vow can be broken by dinner. A small practice can survive the week. Respect the small practice. It is less impressive, but more useful, because the goal is not to create a dramatic version of yourself for 1 week. The goal is to build a trustworthy version of yourself over time. Trustworthy to yourself first. Can you trust yourself to pause? Can you trust yourself to repair? Can you trust yourself to begin? Can you trust yourself to tell the truth? Can you trust yourself not to sell your dignity for attention? Can you trust yourself to return after failing? Can you trust yourself to stop making a home in what keeps hurting you? If the honest answer is not yet, that is not the end. That is the starting point. Not yet means there is work, and work is better than denial. Now we need to talk about the most misunderstood part of all this. Acceptance. Because people hear, accept what you cannot control, and think it means surrendering, becoming passive, tolerating everything, never fighting, never caring, never changing anything. That is a weak interpretation. Acceptance is not passivity. Acceptance is accurate contact with reality. It means, I will stop wasting energy arguing with the fact that this is happening so I can decide what must be done next. That is very different from giving up. Denial says, this cannot be happening. Drama says, this should not be happening. Panic says, I cannot handle this happening. Acceptance says, this is happening. Now what is mine to do? Acceptance returns you to action. It removes the wasted war against the existence of the moment. And that war consumes enormous energy. People lose hours, years sometimes, fighting the fact that something happened. The relationship ended. The opportunity passed. The mistake occurred. The person did not change. The result was not what they wanted. The body has a limit. The past cannot be edited. And instead of asking, what now? They remain trapped in, why is this real? But reality does not become less real because you resent it. It only becomes more expensive. Acceptance lowers the cost. It says, I may not like this. I may be hurt. I may need time. But I will stop pretending I can move forward while denying the ground I am standing on. That is strength. Not liking everything. Not approving everything. Not tolerating harm. Seeing clearly enough to act. And sometimes acceptance leads to action. Sometimes it leads to leaving. Sometimes to repair. Sometimes to grief. Sometimes to boundary, sometimes to patience, sometimes to rebuilding, sometimes to silence. It depends on what reality requires. That is why acceptance must be paired with discernment. Accepting that something is real does not mean accepting that it should continue. If a situation is harmful, acceptance may be the first step toward leaving. If a pattern is destructive, acceptance may be the first step toward changing. If a mistake happened, acceptance may be the first step toward repair. If a loss is final, acceptance may be the first step toward mourning. If something is outside your control, acceptance may be the first step toward withdrawing wasted effort. So acceptance is not the end. It is the beginning of intelligent response. And intelligent response is what inner strength is really about. Not domination, not numbness, not constant positivity. Response. A response that belongs to you. A response that reflects your values more than your panic. A response that does not betray your dignity for temporary relief. A response that can be firm without being chaotic. A response that can be compassionate without being weak. A response that can be honest without being cruel. A response that can be patient without being passive. That kind of response is rare because it requires inner order. And inner order is built when you repeatedly choose what deserves authority inside you. Now, as we move toward the final part of this English script, the central question becomes sharper. Are you willing to stop treating peace as something the world owes you? Because the world does not owe you perfect conditions. People do not owe you constant understanding. Life does not owe you certainty. Your emotions do not owe you convenience. Your past does not owe you silence. Your future does not owe you guarantees. And if your peace depends on receiving those things first, you will live waiting to begin, waiting to calm down, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be safe, waiting to be ready, waiting to be different. But a waiting life is still a life being spent. That is why this matters. Not as philosophy for decoration, as urgency without panic. You do not have infinite time to remain unavailable to your own life. You do not have infinite years to let every mood become a law. You do not have infinite mornings to begin the same cycle again. You do not have infinite chances to repair what you keep postponing. You do not have infinite energy to give to things that only make you easier to control. So the invitation is not become perfect. The invitation is stop abandoning the only territory that is actually yours. Your response, your attention, your word, your next action, your interpretation, your willingness to return, your ability to choose one dignified move under pressure. That is enough for today. And if you can do it today, you can build evidence. If you can build evidence, you can build trust. If you can build trust, you can build character. And if you build character, the world may still shake you, but it will not own you so easily. That is where we will close in the final section. Not with fantasy, not with pretending nothing hurts, but with the most honest form of strength. This affects me, but it does not govern me. That sentence is not cold. It is freedom with a pulse. This affects me, but it does not govern me. That sentence sounds simple, but if you can live it even imperfectly, your whole relationship with life begins to change, because most people only know two extremes. Either they are completely consumed by what happens to them, or they pretend not to care. They collapse, or they go numb. They chase, or they shut down. They over-explain, or they disappear. They attach too much, or they call detachment wisdom. They feel everything as a threat, or they perform indifference. But real strength is not found in either extreme. Real strength lives in the middle, the place where you can feel something deeply without surrendering your whole self to it. The place where pain is allowed to exist, but not allowed to become king. The place where fear is heard, but not allowed to become law. The place where love is real, but not allowed to become self-erasure. The place where ambition burns, but does not burn your values with it. The place where loss hurts, but does not get to define the entire future. That middle place is difficult. It requires more maturity than collapse, and more courage than numbness, because numbness looks strong from a distance. But often, numbness is only pain that found a hiding place. A person can say, "I do not care," while being completely controlled by the effort of not caring. A person can say, "Nothing affects me," while building their whole personality around avoiding what affects them. A person can say, "I am above this," while still organizing their inner life around the thing they claim to be above. That is not freedom. That is still attachment, just wearing armor. Freedom is not the inability to be touched. Freedom is the ability to be touched without being taken. That is the difference. And if you remember only one thing from this entire reflection, remember that. You are not trying to become untouchable. You are trying to become unowned. Life can touch you. People can matter. Loss can hurt. Mistakes can humble you. Criticism can teach you. Fear can visit. But none of these things should automatically receive the right to rule your next move. That right must be earned, and not everything that enters your mind has earned authority. Some thoughts are visitors. Some fears are echoes. Some desires are temporary storms. Some urges are old survival tools. Some memories are unresolved wounds. Some opinions are noise. Some criticism is useful. Some criticism is projection. Some guilt is moral information. Some guilt is manipulation. Some shame is only an old story repeating itself. Wisdom begins when you stop treating every internal event as a command. You can say, "This is here," without saying, "This is my master." That is a form of freedom. And like every serious freedom, it comes with responsibility. Because once you know you do not have to obey every impulse, you can no longer hide behind the impulse so easily. You cannot say, "I was angry," as if anger removed your responsibility. You cannot say, "I was afraid," as if fear automatically deserved the wheel. You cannot say, "I felt rejected," as if rejection gave you permission to abandon your dignity. You cannot say, "I was overwhelmed," as if overwhelm meant every choice disappeared. Emotions explain. They do not absolve everything. That sentence may feel hard, but it is also respectful, because it assumes you are more than a reaction. It assumes there is something in you capable of choosing, even if choosing is difficult. It assumes your past influenced you, but does not have to be your permanent government. It assumes your pain is real, but not the whole truth of who you are. It assumes you can learn. And that is a more dignified view of a human being than treating people as helpless passengers of every mood. Now, this does not mean you will always choose well. You will not. There will be days when the old pattern wins. Days when fear speaks first and you follow it. Days when anger gets your language. Days when approval becomes oxygen again. Days when avoidance feels stronger than discipline. Days when you reopen an old door. Days when you over-explain to someone who is not listening. Days when you make a mistake and almost turn it into an identity. Days when you lose the pause. That will happen. The question is what you do next. Because the next moment matters, and the moment after that, and the one after that. A person does not become free by never falling into the pattern. A person becomes free by shortening the distance between falling and returning. At first it may take months, then weeks, then days, then hours. Then maybe one day you catch it as it begins. The anger rises, and you see it. The fear builds a story, and you notice. The approval hunger reaches outward, and you pause. The old wound tries to speak for the whole present, and you say, I recognize you, but you are not the whole truth. That is growth, not perfection. Recognition, interruption, return. Those three words could be a whole practice. Recognize, interrupt, return. Recognize the pattern, interrupt the automatic move. Return to your chosen values, again, again, again. And the repetition may feel ordinary. But ordinary repetition is how identity is rebuilt. The mind trusts what you repeat. The body trusts what you practice. The soul, if we can use that word plainly, trusts what you honor when it costs you. This is why one dramatic moment of change is rarely enough. You need proof over time. 1,000 small votes, 1,000 returns, 1,000 moments where you do not hand over the keys quite as quickly as before. And eventually, something inside starts to stand differently. You may not notice the exact day it happens. There may be no dramatic announcement. But one day, someone criticizes you and you do not collapse. You listen. You sort. You take what is useful. You leave what is not. One day, something goes wrong and you do not immediately insult yourself. You breathe. You repair. You adjust. One day, someone's silence hurts, but you do not chase your dignity out the door. You feel it. You wait. You remain with yourself. One day, a task you used to avoid appears, and you begin before the negotiation starts. Not because you feel heroic, because you no longer want to keep teaching yourself that your word is meaningless. One day, you lose something, and you grieve, but a part of you stays alive. A part of you says, "This hurts, but I am still here." That is inner strength. Not invincibility, continuity, the ability to remain in relationship with yourself through change. Most people underestimate that. They think strength is measured by how much force you show. But often, strength is measured by how much of yourself you do not abandon under pressure. That is a better question. When pressure comes, how much of yourself do you abandon? Do you abandon your values, your dignity, your clarity, your discipline, your kindness, your honesty? Your boundaries, your ability to think, your ability to wait, your ability to speak cleanly, your ability to repair, your ability to rest without escaping, your ability to keep going. Pressure reveals what is still negotiable. And if everything is negotiable under pressure, then your life has no spine yet. That sounds harsh, but it can also become a starting point. Because a spine is built. You are not born with complete inner structure. You develop it through friction, through correction, through reflection, through practice, through consequence, through honest self-observation, through choosing, again and again, not to make every temporary state the ruler of your future. And this is where a person must stop waiting for life to become easy, because easy conditions do not build the same structure. They may give relief, and relief has value. But relief is not the same as resilience. Resilience is built in contact with resistance. A muscle does not grow because nothing challenges it. A mind does not become steady because nothing disturbs it. A character does not become trustworthy because no temptation appears. You need resistance, but not unnecessary suffering. This is important. Do not go looking for chaos to prove strength. Life will provide enough friction. You do not need to create extra storms. You do not need toxic situations to become wise. You do not need to tolerate disrespect to become strong. You do not need to stay in places that keep damaging you just to practice endurance. That is a dangerous misunderstanding. The point is not to worship hardship. The point is to use the unavoidable hardship you already meet. Use the irritation. Use the delay. Use the fear. Use the mistake. Use the uncertainty. Use the criticism. Use the ordinary discomfort. Use the exact moment where you used to lose yourself. That is enough. You do not need to manufacture pain. You need to stop wasting the lessons already present in your life, and there are many. Every day gives small examinations. The phone gives one. Traffic gives one. Work gives one. Family gives one. Money gives one. Loneliness gives one. Fatigue gives one. Desire gives one. Memory gives one. The mirror gives one. Silence gives one. Failure gives one. The question is whether you are awake enough to treat them as practice, or whether you keep treating them as interruptions. A person with no inner training says, "This ruined my day." A person in training asks, "What did this reveal?" That question changes everything. What did this reveal? Did it reveal impatience, dependence, avoidance, a need to be right, a need to be admired, fear of rejection, fear of being ordinary, fear of beginning, fear of being seen trying, fear of losing control? Good. Now you know where to train. The thing that reveals the weakness is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is the map. And a map is useful even when you do not like what it shows. Do not hate the map. Use it. If criticism reveals dependence on external approval, train there. If boredom reveals addiction to stimulation, train there. If silence reveals fear of abandonment, train there. If mistakes reveal shame, train there. If responsibility reveals avoidance, train there. If uncertainty reveals control, train there. If success reveals arrogance, train there too. Because not only pain tests you, success tests you, praise tests you, power tests you, comfort tests you, attention tests you, opportunity tests you. Some people can survive difficulty but lose themselves in praise. They become addicted to being admired. They start performing instead of living. They confuse attention with worth. They become servants of the image that people reward. That is another form of captivity. Approval does not only hurt when it is absent, it can also corrupt when it arrives. If you do not have a center, praise can control you as much as criticism. Criticism controls by fear. Praise controls by hunger. Both can move you away from truth. So the question is not only, can I survive disapproval? It is also, can I receive approval without becoming owned by it? Can you be praised and remain honest? Can you be admired and remain humble? Can you be seen and not turn your life into performance? Can you succeed and not let success rewrite your values? That is part of inner strength too, because the world does not only attack your center with pain, it also buys it with pleasure, with validation, with status, with comfort, with applause, with shortcuts, with the feeling of being special. If you only guard yourself against suffering, you may still be captured by reward. This is why values must sit higher than mood, higher than praise, higher than fear, higher than image, higher than temporary gain. Values are not decoration. They are the inner constitution. Without them, every emotional election changes the government. Today fear wins, tomorrow desire wins, next week anger wins, then approval wins, then comfort wins. And you wonder why you feel unstable. Because there is no constitution inside, only elections. Real character says, no matter what wins emotionally today, these principles still stand. I will not lie to protect my ego. I will not destroy my body to escape discomfort. I will not betray my dignity to be chosen. I will not use pain as permission to harm. I will not avoid forever what must be faced. I will not confuse being understood with being free. I will not let one mistake become my identity. I will not turn temporary emotion into permanent decision without examination. That is a constitution, and you need one. Not written dramatically, lived practically. Because without inner laws, every mood becomes a dictator. Now, as we approach the end, I want to make this very concrete. When this audio finishes, your life will not become suddenly easier. That is not the promise. Someone may still misunderstand you. Something may still be pending. A fear may still be there. A wound may still ache. A task may still be waiting. A loss may still be real. Your mind may still be noisy. So the promise cannot be, after this, nothing will affect you. That would be false. The better promise is, after this, you may have a clearer place to stand. And sometimes a clearer place to stand is enough. Stand here. Not everything that affects me gets to govern me. Stand here. My first feeling is not always my final wisdom. Stand here. I can pause before I obey. Stand here. I can correct without self-destruction. Stand here. I can care without possession. Stand here. I can act without waiting for perfect readiness. Stand here. I can listen to criticism without handing it my identity. Stand here. I can grieve without becoming only grief. Stand here. I can lose something without losing all of myself. Stand here. I can return. That final one may matter most. I can return. Return from panic. Return from shame. Return from delay. Return from emotional noise. Return from old patterns. Return from mistakes. Return from the need to be seen. Return from the hunger to prove. Return from the urge to escape. Return from the fantasy that peace depends on everything outside obeying me. A person who can return is not easy to destroy. They may be hurt, they may be tired, they may need time, but they know the way back to themselves. And maybe that is one of the deepest forms of resilience. Knowing the way back, not because you never leave yourself, but because you stop pretending you cannot come back. So here is the practice. Do not take 10 things from this. Take one. One doorway, one pattern, one place where you keep giving the keys away. Maybe it is approval. Maybe it is anger. Maybe it is fear. Maybe it is procrastination. Maybe it is over-explaining. Maybe it is the need to control loss. Maybe it is self-hatred after mistakes. Maybe it is emotional noise. Choose one. And the next time it appears, do not try to become a different person instantly. Just create space. One breath, one pause, one honest sentence, one small action, one refusal to make the old move. That is enough for the first repetition. And when you fail, return. When you forget, return. When you react, return. When you avoid, return. When you seek approval again, return. When you lose center, return. Returning is not weakness. Returning is training. There is a quiet dignity in returning. No audience, no drama, no grand declaration. Just the decision to stop letting the old pattern have the final word. That decision, repeated long enough, becomes a life. And yes, some people may not understand your change. They may prefer the version of you that reacted faster, explained more, chased harder, tolerated more, needed more approval, had weaker boundaries, was easier to move, was easier to guilt, was easier to provoke. That may happen. Do not turn that into a war. Just notice it. A person recovering inner authority often disrupts old dynamics, not by attacking, by no longer participating the same way. And when you stop participating in an old role, the system around you may protest. Stay clear, not arrogant, clear. Your goal is not to become untouchable, not superior, not cold, not impossible to love, not above everyone. Your goal is to become less absent from yourself. That is all. Less absent, more present, less ruled, more responsive, less scattered, more centered, less available to chaos, more available to what matters. And if this kind of reflection speaks to you, that probably says something about where you are in your life. Maybe you are no longer satisfied with temporary motivation. Maybe you are tired of hearing phrases that sound good, but do not change anything. Maybe you are starting to see that the real work is not in sounding strong. It is in becoming harder to move away from yourself. That is the kind of work this space is built for. Not noise, not empty inspiration, not pretending life is easy, but looking directly at the patterns that shape a person when nobody is watching. Because that is where life is made. In the private moments, the quiet choices, the ordinary returns, the small refusals, the pauses nobody sees, the repairs nobody applauds, the promises kept when no one is counting. If you understand that, you understand the heart of this, and you may also understand why this is not a one-time idea. It connects to everything. How you love, how you work, how you lose, how you build, how you handle money, how you speak, how you rest, how you choose people, how you leave, how you begin again. A person without inner government will turn every part of life into reaction. A person recovering inner government can turn every part of life into practice. That is the difference. So as we close, do not ask only, "Did I like this?" That question is too small. Ask, "Where will I practice it?" Because the next moment will come. The next trigger, the next silence, the next criticism, the next fear, the next task, the next urge, the next chance to hand over the keys. And when it comes, maybe you will remember this. You do not have to become the storm. You do not have to obey the first wave. You do not have to rent your worth from someone else's reaction. You do not have to call avoidance rest. You do not have to call fear intuition. You do not have to call self-hatred accountability. You do not have to call possession love. You do not have to call numbness strength. You can pause. You can see. You can choose. You can return. And if you return enough times, something changes. The world may still be loud, but you become harder to steal from yourself. That is real strength. Not a performance, not a pose, not a sentence written for others to admire. A quiet authority inside your own life. The authority to say, "This hurts, but it will not own me. This scares me, but it will not decide alone. This matters, but I will not lose myself to keep it. This ended, but I am still here. This is chaos, but I do not have to become chaos." And maybe that is the closest thing to peace most of us can honestly build. Not a life without storms. A self that does not keep handing every storm the keys. So the next time the world moves, and it will move, listen carefully to what happens inside you. Not with panic, with attention. Something will ask for your center. A fear, a memory, a person, a task, a desire, a wound, a story. Before you give it away, pause. Ask one question. Does this deserve to govern me? If the answer is no, do not hand over the keys. Breathe, stand, choose the next right action, small but yours. Because the world does not need to become calm before you begin practicing calm. The world does not need to understand you before you stand in truth. The world does not need to guarantee permanence before you live with presence. The world does not need to approve before you act with dignity. And chaos does not need to disappear before you recover yourself. That recovery can begin now. Not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. One response at a time, one return at a time, one refusal at a time, until one day you realize that life still touches you, still challenges you, still hurts you sometimes, still changes without permission. But it does not govern you as easily. And that is not a small thing. That is the beginning of freedom.